Now we're live. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us on 3WEDU. We're about a minute late. Laura was getting us all organized in the background, so thank you, Laura. We're here tonight to talk a little bit about our recaps from OLC Innovate. But before we do that, can we just talk a little bit about how our very own Dr. Nori just successfully defended her dissertation last week? Nori, did you want to tell us a little bit about it now that you're a big deal doctor?
I could tell you about it in an hour and 10 minutes and pull up some pictures on the screen and just, yeah, but no, I won't do that. First of all, it was well attended by my friends and loved ones. And if I could have brought you in the room, I bet all of you would have been there too. So that was fantastic. Well, we do have to pause for a moment because Tanya finally got her bottle of wine open. drink away.
20 minutes to get this fancy. Who does this? A glass?
Not that. That's all I have to
fancy that is. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So the best part was I was attended by so many people I love who knew a lot about what was going on in the journey, but it really mattered for them to hear the results of my survey, to hear my study. So that was huge. And my extremely technology reticent chair closed the question part with, I had to make some minor revisions, one of which is he actually wanted me to remove some pages, which was interesting. But he sits on a board of a educational consulting company, and he said that I needed this APA formatting all finished, like the final edit done and published, because he wanted the consulting company to actually read my study, because he felt they were going in the wrong direction and that what I reported in the study really mattered for them to stay vital. So that was totally unexpected. And then other than that, it was just kind of the whole day was a blur, lots of little celebrations here and there. And it's one of those pinching moments, those few things in life that it just doesn't feel real because when you've worked on something for so long. So, yep, I see Callie's tweeting in. Callie, you're next. You might get beaten at Adaptive Chat. I don't know. She's hoping to defend this during the summer. So you two are on my heels and you're going to make it. I know you will.
You two, we've got a pool going. The odds in Vegas are looking pretty good. I'm not going to reveal those because I really do need that big money. Right. Bill, but just know we're rooting for you.
Yep. So yeah, I followed behind. I think Whitney was the most recent after you guys. So
I think so. Yeah.
It feels fantastic. It's worth being here.
It is. And just if you ever get nervous about your defense, just remember that my projector exploded and then everyone on my committee hugged me. So pretty much everything that could have gone wrong in the life of Jess went wrong that day. Because when they hugged me, they're all so nice, but I was just like, what's happening? What are we? And I just froze, so it was super awkward, like, yay, I don't know what to do. I blew
my projector bombed in my third slide.
Mine was, I hit the button.
And the projector just powered down. It didn't explode. And the podium that I was at, actually I was able, it had my computer on the screen. So I just turned this teeny little screen, but y'all have seen my slides. Like I put a ton of time into like gorgeous images and very few words unless necessary. And thankfully, Murphy's Law as it is, like I'm always prepared for something to get messed up technologically because if it will, it will. And yet I got the slides back up like a few slides later. So
yeah, if any of you know out there know Lee Graves Wolf, she had some sort of random chemical rained down upon her. There was smoke. There's a time we thought we might have to pull the smoke alarm, but we just kept going. And I'm pretty sure that's why I'm a doctor today. So congratulations, Nori. That's amazing. And I hope we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Patrice, you've not yet put your wine in the document, but you introduce it to us now as well as yourself.
I can, yes. Hi, I'm Patrice, and I am in Ithaca, New York, where today it is sunny and warm and beautiful, and so we're all very happy and cheery, including my animals. So you may see a dog or cat jump into the screen because they're a little pesty today. I think this is something that I've drank numerous times before. It's a Turley 2012 Napa Valley Zinfandel. So I'm toasting to Nori tonight. And I do want to give a shout out, if I can now, to the, since we're doing shout outs right now, to the Solution Design Summit winners that were at OLC Innovate 2017. We had 2 types of voting, and the judges winner, the team was engaging communities of practice, leveraging instructional technology to enhance a multi-generational lingual stratus experience classroom. And they were all from Northern Virginia Community College. And so it was great. This was the first year we had a community college participate, and they were our judges winner. So a shout out to them. And the team from MSU was the judges runner-up, and they did engaging communities of practice across the disciplines and generations to promote student success. And then we also had a community vote, and the community vote went to supporting collaborative learning design experiences. And that team was from University of Central Oklahoma. And these teams worked really, really hard before the conference and during the conference. I just want to say they're all winners to me, and it was just a fabulous time. And we'll talk about that more later in the show.
That's perfect. Sorry for the awkward pause there. I couldn't find my buttons. I'm just going to be a day like that. I put wine on fruit. That means it's sangria. So that's the kind of day that's happening right now. Also still in my gym clothes because I can't read a clock. So thank you, Patrice. And next in the window is Laura Pasquini with her fabulous hair. Laura, could you introduce yourself to us today?
Sure. Hi, Laura here. I don't know if you can see me. I'm trying to play with camera because we use this thing that Google makes, and we're still debating if we should because they've changed it, and it just changed yesterday. So hi, I'm drinking a chai tea masala. The camera may or may not be on me. I can't control Google. But yeah, I'm drinking some chai today. I'm feeling a little under the weather or recovering, so I thought I'd stick with that. Costco has a 3-pack masala, green tea, ginger. So it's the masala ginger I recommend. Shout out, since we're there, I want to just give a shout out to a couple my lovely ladies. Pam Bracey and colleagues from Mississippi State University are empowering African American women to succeed in higher ed, and they're doing some great things for that. I'll share an article what they're doing, but Pam Scott Bracey was one of my ladies in my ACT writing group when she was in the same doc program as me, and so she's a junior faculty member that's trying to really push forward the value of encouraging other women, African American women, to go through the process that Nori just successfully acquired, and getting that PhD and being finished is a struggle. But it's a struggle for some to even think they can get in. So I'm really excited for that. I'll share an article in a second. And then shout out to Anne-Marie Klotz, who was on our show not long ago talking about her research, but also an article within, I think it was USA Today, was around, as part of the cracking the glass ceiling for women in higher ed and what that means. And she just shared that there's going to be multiple ways that we need to think about the glass ceiling in terms of what our students look like as well, and representing them at different levels in the university. So cheers. Namaste, my friends.
And that leaves us with the one and only Ms. Tanya Justin, who figured out her glass cap, overcame adversity, and is now drinking wine with the rest of us. Tanya, could you introduce yourself?
I am Tanya Justin. I'm from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where I head up the Data Research Center and Digital Learning Research and Development. Obviously, I'm completely incompetent with fancy bottles of rosé. So when Nori was here, some of you will remember she bought a ton of wine, which a lot of it is still at my house. And for some reason, I mean, after a flight of wine and probably then some, I thought, let me buy bottles of rosé because those are something I just drink all the time. No, not really. But so I bought some fancy bottles of rosé. One of them is this, I don't even know, Lafarge Miraflores. I put the link in. It's fancy because I don't drink anything that's worth $20. That's ridiculous. But it has this glass-like thing. So you peel off some plastic, and I literally was trying to stick a corkscrew in it, until I realized you have to pull off this glass cork. Like, I mean, I'm sure out of the $20, they spent $19 in packaging in this fancy glass bottle. So anyways, drinking a little rosé today. I have no shout outs, except I'm just so excited that Nori successfully defended. It's not like any of us ever doubted it. And I just feel like the last couple of years, we've just gone along with this journey. And for some of you who are not familiar with her background, you know, she has cognitively been developing and scrutinizing and thinking about OER and digital text and these sorts of things for years and years. You know, we would be drinking wine and she would pull out her phone with her digital text taxonomy to show me, and we'd have conversations about it and all those sorts of things. So it's really great to see it come to this. I don't see this as an end for her. I really look forward to her publishing her work and moving forward and doing really great things. And so it's really great to have another colleague who is such a thinker and is great to create knowledge with, as I share with all of you. So shout out to Nori, Dr. Murphy Barajas. Murphy.
So
Barajas
many
Murphy.
emotions, dudes. Like
No, Murphy Barajas.
2 years. It's we'll get it. We'll get there. We survived the cork. We'll get the names also.
And I feel like today's a winning day.
It is. And just now I'm trying not to cry because of Nori and all the nice stuff you said. We just had all our students graduate, and so I had to tell them to lock it up because emotions are dumb and they're hard and I don't like it. But I love all of you. So back to the conversation. This is going to be a mess, just so y'all know. I'm still in my gym clothes. Whatever. We just had the opportunity to travel to New Orleans and the OLC Innovate Conference in early April and facilitate a roundtable about the whole 3W EDU discussion. And our roundtable was focused on how we can redefine higher education to support women who innovate. So honestly, you know, we do this panel and we talk and we chat. We've done panels before, but the roundtable is really where we kind of fit. We really like to talk to other people and meet them and hear what they're working through and struggling with and the ways that they've helped other people. So if you are in the document, I've linked us to the document from OLC Innovate where we were taking notes and you know, trying to capture the thoughts from our colleagues at the table. Now, Laura, I know you were at a big table. Did you want to share a little bit about what you talked about at the conference, and then maybe a little bit after? I saw you following up on Twitter a bit as well.
Yeah, I actually posted a blog post, so I just gave some high-level points that we talked about. Just like so the questions that just helped us develop was, what does it mean to be a woman in education, to be in innovative environments, and talk about obstacles. And then we talked about, the other question prompt was, how do organizational structures of universities help people to be innovative? And so those were kind of leading points. And I gave some points there that different groups talked about, but I was really surprised just not talking about what we talked about, because people can read it and I don't want to reread it. That I loved meeting Brian Best, but he was the only male in the room. And I was a little disappointed about that, actually. And I don't know, like, he was at my table and he looked through like, can I be here, Laura? I was like, of course you can. Actually, more people should be. And that's the whole point. So that was kind of just outside the conversation or notes, thoughts that I had. We had some really great discussions, but I think I always wonder about if people think there's a barrier because it's labeled X, and do we label us as just women as an exclusive group? Because I think of my trans friends, I think of people that identify in different ways and different acronyms on different pronouns. So I was like, no, friend, you can stay. As Alex would say, hey comrades, hey squad, like, this is part of the conversation we need everyone to be at.
I've asked for feedback a couple of times. I think that is something interesting that I'm seeing and I don't know how to solve. So maybe those of you who are following along on Twitter can help us. You know, that men have come to support and be a part of the conversation, but also, you know, when I'll ask for feedback, say, oh, well, that's not really my place to comment, or it's not, you know, I just wanted to hear the conversation. It wasn't really for me to participate. So have any of you heard that as well? Talk a little bit about your tables. Maybe Tanya, you were at a table with me. Why don't you talk a little bit about our table, and then maybe some of that. I know you've encountered that as well.
Nori probably would be the better one to talk about what was going on on our table, because, you know, she was really engaged. I think we were very lucky to have the diversity of folks that we came with, different backgrounds and so forth. We were talking about, at some point, instructional designers sort of being a service, and how a lot of times in higher education, service is seen as something performed by women. And it reminds me of Hochschild's book in the 70s, or was it 80s, called Managed Care. And it just was about that as careers started developing in the 70s, a lot of the sort of service or care sorts of things were those that were always taken on by women. So daycare workers, teachers, nurses, these sorts of things. So I think when you think of the institution and you think of a support role, an instructional designer role, or these sorts of things, you know, are those positions that are taken on, you know, and perpetrate a more feminine structure? Are those positions that are then less well paid than others? Is there a challenge in getting people to respect you and to listen to your advice because you are in the support role?
One of the other things that came up at our table is it's significant to why I ended up going on the path to a terminal degree. Two young women at the room both said that being instructional designers, they didn't necessarily feel that their gender played a role. They definitely felt that the level of their degree did, and it was hard to work with faculty in their role as women without terminal degrees and be taken seriously by anyone. It wasn't necessarily a gender thing, it was something about title. Which is obviously it's stuck in my mind, because the same thing happened to me when I got to higher ed. 20 years of experience and some pretty decent master's level research didn't matter at the liberal arts university where I was. And so I couldn't join or participate because I didn't have the right title. And I don't think it helped. I don't think being a woman was doing any favors either. But it was really significant that was some of the theme that came up where we were. And then one of the things that I've said multiple times when I'm sitting at our tables at our round table conversations is, I often get the sense that women who come to our sessions follow us and they want to meet us, and it would be like this like, oh, if only I could join their group. And to me, that is thinking the wrong way. We already found each other. We've already got this dialogue going. Women who come and people who come, I shouldn't be exclusive, I should be inclusive. Anyone who comes to our sessions because of the topics we talk about, I encourage them to not get my contact information, get the contact information of another person in the room that they heard their story and they had that, as Patrice said, find your tribe. Find your tribe in our sessions. Reach out to the people in that room. And there were two young women who did exactly that. They shared each other's contact information. I saw them later at the Loop event talking to one another, and they had made this commitment to continue their own dialogue beyond our session. I just think that's the point of some of this, is just expanding the dialogue, not being central to it.
Yeah, I saw a lot of connections happening at the tables, and that was really interesting to me. You know, in the past when people have been like, hey, great discussion, and then it felt like it kind of ended. This year felt a little different. One of the things that came up in the conversation, it looks like at every table, was, now I just totally lost it, but basically, what kind of languages do we use? What kind of language do we use with each other? What kind of language do we use with other women? So like, whereas we're saying go find your tribe. We're not saying you can't be a part of our tribe. You know, it's not like on Fridays we wear pink or whatever, but it's just like, you know, we found each other and we are also still looking for the different perspectives and the different connections. One of the things, my friend Kate Sonka, I've put it in the chat, in the document here, she shared with me today, knowing that we were having this, 7 ways I've learned from other women to fight imposter syndrome. And we were just talking, you know, she today sent me a little message. She's like, can I brag for a second? I did this really cool thing, but I don't really want to throw it out there to the whole world. I just want to share it with somebody. And, you know, finding somebody that you can do that with. I'm not huge at talking about things I've done or, oh, look at this thing I wrote or whatever. I'm getting better, but it's kind of terrible. But when I have somebody that I can say that to, or I can message and say, hey, can I share this with you? You know, that's just so valuable. So if you do come to our sessions, you know, meet the people around the table and see, you know, what you might have in common with them as well. That's a really good point, Lori. Patrice, what about you? I think you had a big table too, and you were there all by yourself.
So I would say one of the themes that came up at our table that I think we all see just continue to come up and stresses the importance of it is having a mentor. And the discussion at our table, though, it's a relative word, but we had some younger women at our table. And they were talking about how you know.
You mean younger age or experience?
Yeah, that adds an extra layer of difficulty being young at a meeting and how much having a mentor helped them. And we also discussed that not just from at work, but at a conference, and how, you know, you're young and you're new, and it could be your very first conference. And so I would just encourage people, you know, if you see someone at a conference of any age, to follow on to, you know, what we were just talking about, you know, go out of your way to say hello, you know, ask, you know, get to know them, ask a little bit about them, and show them around, because that was really what they were looking for, is somebody to just help them meet people, start to network, develop relationships. And certainly, you know, within a meeting, we've talked about this at other sessions, you know, help them to have their voice amplified. And the other discussion we talked about quite a bit was hiring practices. And, you know, we talked a lot about job descriptions, and that, you know, we need to go about thinking, being more thoughtful about how we write job descriptions. And that if women in general only apply for a job if they meet, say, 60% of the requirements of your job description, which is what many of us do, you're just throwing everything on there and seeing what sticks. You're really excluding a significant number of women. And so to be very thoughtful, what are those qualities that you really, really want to have? And I've seen a lot of places now, you know, they're starting to, you know, write things like PhD or equivalent work experience, or, you know, they'll list like 5 or 6 different types of degrees. And to follow on to the topic of, you know, of wording, is to think about the wording that you're using in your job description. You know, a lot of times job descriptions for programmers and in IT have very male language. And so, you know, if you can make it more inclusive, talk about it being a collaborative environment, you know, flexible work environment, being family friendly, you know, all of those things can be helpful. But the other piece is think about where you're posting your job descriptions. You know, I think that was something that came up, is a lot of places, you know, are being thoughtful about, you know, if you want to have a more diverse workforce, really be thoughtful about where you're posting those job applications. And the other comment I was going to just make is about a month or so ago, I became a mentor in a program that's called New York State Scholars, and they match up women who are in STEM fields with young women who are in colleges. And the topic that they're discussing this week is actually imposter syndrome. And so I think it's really great that we're bringing up this discussion and having it with these women while they're still in college. But one comment I wanted to make was an article that was shared in a different discussion talked about how some people were suggesting that they encourage women to skip a grade when they're young, that we should like move them ahead, have them skip grades, graduate early so that they can get out in the workforce before they're thinking about bearing children. And so this goes to, I think, one of the articles that was posted, you know, like instead of, you know, trying to change women, we should be, you know, making systemic changes to the organizational culture. And so that really was a little scary that somebody was thinking about pushing young girls out the door earlier so that they could get their career in before it was time to have babies. So that's my rant.
Yuck. All yuck. I want to hear what Tanya's going to say about that. I'm going to stop at yuck.
Well, it's so funny you bring that up because I was just at a meeting, and so that actually came up in one of the conversations, like, hey, did you read this article recently? And it seemed like there was almost surprise that women could actually exceed men in, you know, in the academic, you know, status, hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, ladder. If they proceeded through college, their master's and their PhD immediately and got tenure, and then they were at the quote unquote woman bearing age. So it's like if women quickly went through all of this and got tenure and then decided to have children, they were equivalent to their male counterparts. But I think that, you know, Patrice, great. So we encourage women to go straight through, but I think you bring up a great point, is that we need to change the organizational structures that have the capacity to allow women to progress naturally, however they, you know, seem fit. And it's very interesting that men with children do not have the same situation. So the inequality between men and women and their parenting roles, we won't touch this today, but I think that's really interesting. And just one other thing, Jess, I think what Patrice is talking about, and I was really having this aha moment at our OLC Innovate session, this is huge. This hiring, thinking about hiring, when you are writing a job description, and I've had this frustration because, you know, when you're looking for a job, and when I'm looking for employees, I want somebody who's really amazing. And sometimes to some degree, you can fit the job around a really amazing, hardworking, intelligent person. And so I think when we have these really strict job descriptions, and I understand that there's HR implications and hiring implications with that, but I think when we put too much out there, just one, we're limiting ourselves and the type of candidates that we're going to get. And then also we're shutting the door for some women if we think about applying some of the research that we've talked about here and the fact that women would only apply for something if they were 100% qualified. So I think what Patrice is talking about here is super important for any of you that are hiring or in that realm. You know, please take to heart what Patrice is saying, because it's super important for us to open the door for women in our organization.
Well, I want to also comment with something about age as well. I mean, I get fast tracking to advance a woman in the faculty realm of trying to get tenure, but I was thinking about this today in the shower, like the whole idea of tenure track and the traditional tenure track route is probably should have gone out with, you know, Michigan and Detroit trying to hang on to a union mentality of putting cars together on an assembly line, and damn it, we're going to keep doing this assembly line, and I don't care what's going on in Japan. I'm going to make cars like this, and my union's going to protect me. I'm 53 years old, and I just got my terminal degree, and I'm pretty freaking stoked about it. And the path that got me here is the exact path that I was supposed to take in my life. And whatever jobs come out of this are the exact right jobs that I'm prepared to do next. So I agree with, and I have exception to, I think being an authentic human being at all the stages of your life are probably a really powerful message to women in a world where the disruptions around us are hard to determine what's going to disrupt next and what's going to just kind of cling to a traditional trajectory.
I am fighting with every piece of my being right now. You guys joke about how busy I am. I am fighting becoming the person that people want me to be right now. I don't want to speak in executive, and I don't want to wear suits to work. And, you know, but the fight is equally exhausting as like, if I were to decide to do that. And so, you know, I just kind of came to that conclusion. I think it was because I was excited to talk to you guys today. But, you know, I am fighting equally hard against becoming what people want. I mean, we are a union institution at MSU. I'm happy to share my job posting. I have spent a long time writing it in ways that are inclusive and things like that. I can't just put it out on the internet. But if you DM me or tweet at me, I'm happy to share that. That's a really good point, Nori. The path we took to get here is exactly the right path. I can't be anyone else. I lost track of time. I'm in my gym clothes, smell a little bit like an armpit, and put some fruit and some box wine. This is me, and that's great. You know?
Well, Jess, I think bringing in what Nori was saying and what Twitter was saying, I mean, I think, and we have a couple of people sort of chiming in, and we have some new people joining us, which is really nice. And I think that's the thing is everybody needs to figure out their own path. The organizational structure should have the capacity to have a respect for that authentism. You know, Callie was talking about, yes, be your authentic self, find your path in life and what works for you. We also have a new person joining us, which I just lost, who did it straight through very quickly and had her PhD in microbiology at 27.
That would be Dr. Whitney.
And then went through and got tenure, and then went through and had a baby. So when I was younger, I wasn't planning about getting married and having kids either. Like, I was like, let's just go rule the world. Obviously that path went in a different way. So I think too, there's a lot of contingencies that happen in our lives that we have to figure it out as well. So I think embracing all of those paths is really important. But I just wanted, Dr. Whitney Holden is joining us. And so that's really great as well, or at least joining us in the Twitter back channel. So excellent.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're hearing barking pibbles because I think a leaf moved outside. But also kind of related to this, Kelly Morrison shared an article with us earlier about what does a tenure track professor dress like? What does it look like to be, what is the gap there? So some of these things that we're talking about, the pressure to fit in and be something or speak a certain way, or, the pressure to get released from school early so we can work before we have our little babies, things like that. I think that's a real thing, and it's something that's probably invisible that a lot of us are fighting. Laura, I think you're unmuted. Did you?
We're fighting our own battles.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was funny. Callie and I had a back and forth just about like who is in the room and who's not in the room. It doesn't even have to be in the room at the session because not everyone can even go to conferences. But I think my point was maybe our conversations, and most of them go around culture change and organizational, institutional embeddedness. Like, this is what we do, and it's more about systems and structures. And I agree with Nori. So she was talking about the assembly line and union as cars, and you're right, we aren't changing what we used to do. And it's great that people want to follow this path, but that path is not fluid, nor is it the same anymore, nor is it a direct one for all. So I think it's interesting to see, like, we recently had to do this compliance thing, as we do for many things at our university. One of my law professors kind of went on a rant on it, but it was around discrimination and sexism and harassment in the workplace. And it was talking about just like the next decade, 67 of the new workers in the US will be female, Asian, African American, or Hispanic. Only 31% will be white males. But we're still facing up against institutions that are set by the history and they've not been changed. I think it's kind of cool that we're coming to a point where the next generation are trying to make changes to systematically change things. So it's not about a female thing, it's about a family thing, which is bigger, or it's about a way that we live or the way that we work. And so I don't think our typical employee will be the ones that we see in US employment, but I don't see that changing. And as we do trying to change things, and I saw the NBA's campaign, the Lean In Together, I like the best thing that Daniel Peabody tweeted and said, why don't NBA players donate their salaries to the WNBA so they can have all equal salaries? That's really leaning together. Like, don't just use a hashtag NBA, but like, let's do something besides just saying you're doing something on Twitter or online or somewhere on social media.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's everywhere. We just recently had this phenomenal women's basketball player, Tori Jane Koska out of MSU. She was the #1 draft pick in the WNBA. It was amazing. She went to the Chicago Sky. She was incredible. And then the local newspaper dedicated a whole front page story to the male basketball player who was staying, and not a thing about her. I was just like, oh my God, I sent the worst email and got the shittiest reply. You know, like, what do you do? And so that fight though is so hard. I mean, that's so taxing, like the trying to change. And I think it's easy. Like several times this week, I was like, okay, I give up. I'm just gonna talk this way and do this, and I'm just gonna put in the time. But no, that's not the answer at all.
But some people want to do that though. And like, I don't know if you saw the New York Times, that article I put in the doc, it was around some of the millennials. And I don't know if this is all true, because I think there was a correction at the bottom, but some want quote unquote stay-at-home wives. Some women want to be at stay-at-home moms, and they don't want to disrespect that. Or they want to balance and have a bit of career. And we don't ever talk about those kind of, like what Tanya said, find the person, and then maybe the role is a part-time or a flex role. Like, I think that's a cooler, like, why don't we re-envision how we work? It's so hard for us to do that.
And that's the thing about inclusion, is we need to challenge the structures to allow those things too, that there is no right answer. There's just not. It's, I mean, I know I have several friends who are just, you know, they are so happy. They have found their path. They are parents. They stay at home. That's great. But challenging the structures in ways that kind of allow both of those. Sorry, my neighbor is yelling at her dog about pooping. It's right outside my window.
Mary hit on it, and you guys are, or Nori hit on it, and you guys are as well. I mean, the point is that work was developed, like our structures for work are over 100 years old. We're like living in the industrial age, where our work was all manufacturing 100 years ago, right? Like we were producing things on quote unquote pseudo assembly lines, which later then we automized, and then we became this knowledge society, right? It's one of the things I teach about sort of this transition in my organizational communication course.
Education is, we haven't really transitioned that one last traditional vestige. We're all kind of hanging on tight to this one a little bit, and that's across the country. I feel like there's this willingness to pretend that a liberal arts education, I take that word back because that's not correct. There's a willingness to hold on to a liberal arts education as the center point. We know there's this new majority learner that is not an undergraduate who just came right out of high school, but our structure, we're trying to keep that structure central. And I just feel like when I make the analogy of the car business, we're missing some stuff here, and those points are about people like us doing things a little bit differently. Sorry, I cut in. You're basically saying the same thing, but I just feel really strongly that we're holding tight to a liberal arts education.
I mean, I think where some organizations have learned to move forward in their organization to some extent, to get out of the traditional 40-hour work week, which was invented so that we, along with labor unions, so we didn't take advantage of workers and child laborers in physically demanding jobs. To the knowledge worker, and I've really felt for the majority of my professional life, I've definitely been working 40, 80 hours a week. And so it's a little, so I think in some ways, some organizations have transformed their structure. Even 20 years ago, we were talking about what they call feminist structures of organizing, where it was getting rid of the hierarchy. Having a flattened hierarchy was sort of thought of this postmodern approach to organizing. And I think and I think that's what we feel this tension of, is that we have this really strong hierarchical structure, a division between faculty and service staff. We very much still, because of our financial models, view students as like incoming things, cows with dollar signs on their chest. We're moving them through the assembly line. They're outputting. Is there necessarily, have they gathered what they were supposed to get out of college? Is there an alignment with whatever their future path, what they wanted it to be? Which I also think is why we're seeing a lot in the this whole movement in education, that we need to unbundle education. I'm not agreeing with it, I'm just saying.
I lost my mute button. Patrice, you've been a little quiet, but it's looked like you've kind of tried to get in here every once in a while. What do you have to say just right now in general? Because I like you.
Because you like me. Well, I like you too. I think that that we seem to continue to have these conversations, and one of the things that I can't remember which one of us said was we need to stop saying something and do something. And so I've kind of been thinking about that. Each month we come back to a lot of the same themes. Systemic change, changes in the organizational structure, mentoring. That's one of the reasons that I started participating in this mentoring program, is because I really wanted to connect with some women while they're in college to see, what can we do at that point to help them persist, not just through college, but certainly beyond college and in their careers. And so that's, something that I would love to have some of our listeners share in the back channel. What are some of the things, what's something you think you could do when you go to work tomorrow? What's one small thing that you could do to make a difference and just move the needle a little bit? Because I think that's the problem. We're spinning our wheels a little bit. And what are some of the things that we need to do to start moving that needle? And I think just like when we think about moving the needle in teaching practices, we need to start small, have small successes, and build on those small successes. And so if we could just all start thinking about that and curating some ideas, I think that would be a step in the right direction.
I just want to reemphasize too what Patrice was saying, and the point that we've sort of talked about some of these things. So for example, hiring. If you're hiring, think about who you're bringing into your organization. And I'm not necessarily saying just hire women, but hiring people that have these shared values that are going to empower everyone. I think a second thing that we've talked about is once you become an administrator in a unit, a director or manager or whatever, one of the things that I did is make sure that there was more flexible work, that there was more balance, that there was an embracing people who care and understanding their value as much as those who are high producers. So I think there's already lots of things that we've talked about. And Patrice, you're right. Anybody listening or anybody can walk into their organization this week and start into their higher educational institution and start thinking about ways and things that they can do. And that's the whole thing they say in postmodern theory and organizations, right? It's little behaviors that we make that eventually change the organizational structure and culture. So very awesome stuff.
For those following along on our hashtag, I've just reported the tweet that's some butts. So please ignore the butts until Twitter takes it down. I think that's a really good point you just made, Tanya. And also, Patrice, those small victories, they don't seem like a ton, but when they build, they're super powerful. I'm going to say that my small victory is putting fruit in this cheap wine. Super working right now. That's one thing I can do to make everyone out there's life better.
Something we said when we left our conversation, because we actually had the same sentiment as you did, Patrice, was it's great to have this chat, but what are you going to do when you go back to campus or your institution or organization or company? And one woman said, I actually haven't reached out to some of my other colleagues to not check in, but check them forward kind of thing. And if they didn't struggle, because some of us shared the sentiment, we haven't noticed with some of the issues came up of language or behavior or attitudes or positioning, and it was a seniority thing more than a gender role thing. But I think the women that did not feel that way said, well, maybe other women do, and other folks do in general. And so maybe I should start just, having that check forward with them and see where they're going. And also a cool thing I heard on the Radical Candor podcast, I was catching up on that. It's Radical Candor is a book as well. But they talk a little bit about asking what their future plans are. And so an example was a developer wanted to be a CTO, but didn't want to take over that job in the firm, but would be moving down the road. So maybe if you tell your future boss things that you're working on, he or she will go, oh, well, I'm going to give you experience. And for that developer, they needed back end and front end experience. So maybe you say, I want to go into assessments down the road. Maybe we have you work on a small project, or I want to eventually have a position that has budgetary needs. Well, maybe they assign you part of a budget to work on, balance, examine, identify, or grants. I don't know, say what you want to be doing in the future. And that's kind of how you could shift your own, like doing things forward for folks and having those conversations. So if you're a supervisor, it's easier for you to ask that versus an employee may not think to mention that because they don't want to say, I don't like what I do right now. But you can help them move them forward by asking them to think about what they want to develop for their next position or role or experience.
I invite people to say about what they don't like. I have some people that I know this isn't what they want to do. I have some people that I know that if they're still with me in 10 years, I've done something wrong. Callie just brought up a really great point. I love how she said this and the things that we're talking about in mentorship and helping others. She said it's all about each one bringing one. If we reach back while we're reaching forward, we can be supported and support others. And that's phenomenal. And I would say it doesn't even have to be women supporting women. So I signed up for the Msu Mentors Program, and I got paired with a mentor who is my polar opposite in every way. He is a budget officer. He's a mild-mannered, middle-aged white dude, very quiet, very, very thoughtful. Like right off the bat, he is just completely, the first day I was actually like, oh my God, I'm going to kill him. What's going to happen? But it's been the greatest experience. And I think it's because he does what Callie says, is he tries to bring me along and tries to show me some of the things that I may not be thinking of. Laura, that's
to gain perspective and to learn from other people as well. I just wanted a quick jump back to what Laura was saying, which was very interesting. Majority of the time when I've done my budget, whether it was budget for my unit or budget for a grant, I didn't really too much like get people's input or feel like that was something that my staff necessarily wanted to be a part of. I worked for a tax accountant years ago when I was in, actually he was a tax attorney when I was in undergrad. And so that's always something I've been pretty good at. But I recently brought in the team to help me with a budget problem just because going through grant budgets that are underway, it can be really challenging because there's so many different things going on and how the accounting system works are not straightforward. And I just knew we could get it done faster. And it was really interesting sort of how appreciative they were to see that, to even see the system that manages the grant dollars, to see the different funding sources and how that works, to see how difficult it is to sort of find out how much money you have left for the upcoming year and different things like that. So, they got a quick, 1-day seminar yesterday on managing grant budgets after, you receive the grant. And I didn't think about it ahead of time, but they both were super appreciative. Now, and I had, first of all, was making a joke, like, aren't you so excited to manage a budget? Obviously, moving forward, all of them will want to get their own federal grant someday. So it's really great that they had that experience and that moving forward, they can say, not that they necessarily managed the grant, but they definitely participated in that. And so sometimes you don't think about bringing people in to help give them that experience on certain things like budgets, whether it's department budgets or grant budgets. Jess, I know you and I have talked about budgets with each other to help each other, but sometimes bringing your team in helps.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump back to talking about helping people find their way if they're not happy in their position or what they're doing. Because I think we each also have to learn to speak up. Frequently we think that the other person will just guess how we're feeling, or they must, know that I want to do something else. And so hopefully, I think this is, especially helpful if you're in a situation where you talk frequently with your supervisor and you have that type of relationship. And so it's great if you do have those weekly one-on-ones. But I think each woman or everyone out there does have to practice, speaking up in a positive way and, and sharing what you want and what your goals are, and ask for help in attaining those goals along the way. And one of the hardest things for a supervisor, I think you kind of alluded to that, Jess. So I think a successful supervisor is someone who develops someone and then they leave. But that's also the hardest thing for you to do is, to let a really great person go.
Yep, but that's part of the development too. Is somebody comes to me and says, "Well, I'm doing this, but I'd really rather be doing that." How amazing are they going to be in the job they're in for 10 years? So go ahead.
I mean, it's also a pride point, when people have worked, for me and then they go on and do amazing things, it's just a philosophy that my old boss, who was a man, that sort of instilled, like, this is probably not your last stop. We want you to be the best person you can be and happy doing whatever you want to do. And maybe that's here and maybe that's somewhere else. And I always thought that was really awesome. And so I think it's a bit of a point of pride when you see people move on and doing amazing things. So I think that's just really cool. I think also when you're interviewing for a job, that is something to ask. Do you know what I'm saying? So what is the turnover? Why, when people left here, where did they go? Are those people moving up? Did they come in as instructional designers and now they went out to associate directors or directors positions? So that's a really good question to gauge the organizational culture, and if it is a growth culture, if it's going to help you with professional development, to grow professionally, to move on to the next big thing in your trajectory.
That's an awesome point. So we've got about 8 minutes left to kind of wrap up our conversation. If you're following along on the document, which we will also share on Twitter, a lot of resources have been added. I'm so excited to hear that Radical Candor is a podcast. I can't even tell you. I read that book and it was incredible. It made my job harder and better. Just so many things. So we are coming into our last little bit, and I wanted to get to the point where we can share our rants and other things, but I cannot find them in the document because I am.
Oh, you find
done
that,
most
Jess,
of them.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
No, I think we've done most of them, Jess. I was going to say, I think it's been cool to catch up with all of you on these topics, because I feel like this is something that we really care about, and we're each thinking about what we're doing in our own professional lives individually, but then I think it's important that we recognize that you can't do it all alone, and we come back to each other for that reason and bounce ideas. And I'm like, wow, next time Tanya does a grant, I definitely want to be on a Google Hangout to see that. So yeah, I would love to learn more about grant writing. And I've been learning about budget, and I don't know how much I should say publicly about, but I think most first time people do a miscalculation and then they're over their budget like a bunch of money. I did a miscalculation and I was under my budget for a bunch of money, which is great because it's the end of the year and I get to offer, but I am still learning that as well. And my boss laughs at me all the time, but the budget thing, I like that. I was really excited to learn about that. So thank you for sharing that. One thing though, Laura, I think, did you share this under last call, under boasts and cheers? First, we're going to cheer Nori again before we sign off, but the bullet point under that is, until university leadership looks like the diversity of students. I shared that already. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was Anne-Marie Claude said, that was her section. That was what she said essentially. And so shout out to her, but yeah, I've already tweeted that out. Okay, fantastic. I can't keep up with all the different buttons, so I have to go back later. All right. Well, we have about 6 minutes left. Did anyone want to circle back to a particular topic? Tweet, share. Did we just want to stare lovingly at Nori again? I have another book that got tossed out there. I was listening to, we have this I think it's a local radio program. And this guy wrote a book, and he's quite upfront about it, but it's called The Unmade Bed, The Messy Truth About Men and Women in the 21st Century. And he talked about this segment on hollow patriarchy. It's only part of the book, but it was an interesting listen that I thought, since I know that Callie likes to listen to podcasts too, and she's gonna take this down. But the book itself talks about, like, it's just not the same, because not everyone likes to do domestic things, whether you're female, like, we've just transitioned the 21st century, that I think we've all just changed what we used to do. Like, there's no way anyone of us, well, maybe you do, but I don't, go up and dust the curtains or iron, like, or vacuum every day. Like, people used to do that. And I was like, and usually that was a female role, or women's role, which I'm like, God, no, like, there's no need to dust like 3 times a week or whatever they do. So a lot of our lives in the 21st century, we all just stopped doing a lot of this domestic work. So I just thought that was an interesting book to read. But now I'm looking at the Feminist Fight Club that's connected to the article from Kate. So thanks a lot. My Google shopping cart is full.
Yeah, I'm super excited to read all of these books. Like, oh, my life has changed now that I'm reading so much. The whole thing that you just said about cleaning, the funny thing is, I was joking with my spouse the other day or other week, whatever. It's like, I wonder what it'll say on my tombstone. And he laughed and he said, what it's going to say is, I just need to sweep this up real quick, because I'm super obsessed with my floors and I have dogs and muddy paws. Mm-hmm. And every time we're about to do anything, I have. So yes, I do dust my curtains and sweep my floor several times a day, but it's just because I'm nuts. Anyway, Patrice?
I think I did all of my boasts and rants, except I, of course, want to congratulate Nori once again, and I can't wait until we are all in the same space and place, and we can celebrate together. And also circle back to OLC Innovate. I just thought it was a great conference. I had a lot of really, really amazing, great conversations, and Jess Knott deserves a shout out for the amazing job she did pulling it all together and help making it happen and supporting me along the way as I pulled together the Solution Design Summit. So a shout out to you, Jess Knott.
And a shout out right back to you. That was a team effort, man. That thing was big and unwieldy, and it just, the conversations this year were amazing. And we look forward to next year.
Yeah, there were a lot of first-time attendees who thought it was brilliant. It just really had a focus on the middle range of people in higher ed who are passionate about the work they do. And somewhere this year seemed to just capture that audience's attention, and in no small part because of you guys. It was pretty awesome.
Yay for great stuff. So it is 6:57. Tanya, Laura, Patrice, Nori, I mean, we can celebrate Nori again. Is there anything that anyone specifically would like to say to Nori about how great she is? Just, I mean, look at the hair, you know, whatever.
I'll say something about my research.
I would love that.
So I've had a 27-year career where most of my focus has been on trying to take people in education through the process of grieving, and I've directed all of my attention on faculty and trying to help faculty understand and integrate technology into their coursework, into their curriculum. And over a period of time, I had this secret guilty pleasure about, you know, colors and fonts, which I've had an unnatural love for over my life. But really what developed in that sort of sub-place when I was just secretly like taking time off and reading books about design and books about design thinking and books about design research, ultimately my study resulted in the focus of my whole career, which is faculty, and faculty is the center. And my study was about how does the student adoption of digital textbooks get influenced by their faculty members. And ultimately, the only thing that was significant was the actual design of the ease of use and the perceived usefulness of the textbook itself. And the instructor really wasn't instrumental in a student's adoption of a lower cost, lower cost course material. I am blown away at how I feel really happy about taking all that design stuff to the top and letting the faculty stuff, it's not like faculty don't matter, because they do, but I need to reinvent what that means around course design, instructional design, user experience, design research, and why my study came out with a null hypothesis. So I took you to the top of the hour. How about that? Huh.
And you did it brilliantly. So thanks for bearing with me today while I scatteredly tried to facilitate this conversation. And hopefully we'll see you. We're submitting more roundtable proposals this week. So hopefully we'll see you again soon. And we'll see you next month. Thanks.